The day Kiran stopped being himself was the day the village stopped hearing his voice, and the world became a little quieter without knowing why. What happens when a boy with a rare gift trades everything he is for everything he is not? What does it cost him, and what does it take to find his way back? Sometimes the greatest battle a person will ever fight is not against the world outside. It is against the voice inside that whispers, "You are not enough." This is that battle, and this is that victory. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? Now, let us begin. There was a small village nestled between green hills and golden fields, where the river ran clean and the mornings smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. The village was called Mirpur. Simple people lived there: farmers, weavers, potters, and craftsmen. People whose hands knew hard work and whose hearts knew simple joy. In that village lived a boy named Kiran. Kiran was 16 years old, and he had a gift that most people in Mirpur had never seen before. He could carve. Not just carve, he could take a plain piece of wood and breathe life into it. Birds that looked like they might fly away, hands that looked like they were reaching for something, faces that carried so much feeling you felt like they might speak. Every evening after helping his father in the fields, Kiran would sit under the old banyan tree at the edge of the village with his small knife and a block of wood, and he would carve. The younger children would gather around him and watch in silence, their eyes wide, their mouths open. He was not the strongest boy in the village, he was not the loudest, but he was deeply, completely, beautifully himself. And then, everything changed. There was another young man in Mirpur. His name was Rajan. Rajan was broad-shouldered, confident, and everything Kiran was not on the outside. When Rajan walked through the village, people made way. When Rajan spoke at the community gatherings, the elders nodded. When Rajan laughed, the whole courtyard seemed to join in. The village respected Rajan, and Kiran noticed. He noticed how the farmers called on Rajan to help lead the harvest planning. He noticed how fathers pointed at Rajan when they told their sons, "Be like that, be strong, be useful." He noticed how nobody ever gathered around Rajan's work the way they gathered around a boy sitting quietly under a tree with a piece of wood. And slowly, painfully, a thought crept into Kiran's heart like a weed into a garden. What if who I am is not enough? Now I want to stop right here and ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments below. Have you ever looked at someone else's life and felt like your own was too small? Have you ever felt like the real you, the quiet you, the creative you, the different you, was somehow not enough for this world? If yes, keep watching, because what happens next in Kiran's story is exactly what happens to all of us when we believe that lie.
Kiran put down his carving knife. Not all at once. First, he just carved less. Then he started spending his evenings with Rajan's group instead, learning to speak louder, to argue at village meetings, to carry himself with a weight he didn't naturally have. He copied Rajan's walk. He copied Rajan's tone. He repeated opinions that were not his own in a voice that did not sound like him. And for a brief moment, the village noticed him differently. An elder clapped him on the shoulder one morning and said, "Good, you are becoming a real man, Kiran." His father smiled with a pride that made Kiran's chest both swell and ache at the same time. But every night when he returned home and walked past the banyan tree, he felt it, the silence of the wood, the stillness of the uncarved block, the absence of something that used to make him feel alive. He stopped sleeping well.
He stopped eating with hunger. He was present in every place and absent from every moment. One evening, his mother found him sitting in the dark corner of the house, staring at nothing. She sat beside him without a word for a long time. Then she asked softly, "When last did you carve something, my son?" Kiran had no answer. He could not even remember. The very next morning, something happened that would change Kiran's life forever. An old man arrived in Mirpur. He was traveling between villages, selling nothing, buying nothing. He carried only a walking stick, a small bag, and the kind of silence that wise people carry. The villagers called him Baba Nur, a name he had earned over a lifetime of quiet wisdom. Baba Nur rested under the banyan tree at the edge of the village, the same tree where Kiran used to carve. Kiran passed by that morning and something pulled him, an old feeling like a memory in his hands, and he sat down near the old man without quite knowing why. Baba Nur looked at him for a long moment, not harshly, not with pity, just with the clear, honest eyes of someone who sees what is really there. "You have the hands of a craftsman," the old man said quietly, "but you are holding them like they belong to someone else." Kiran looked down at his own hands. He had not thought about them in months. "I used to carve wood. I was good at it, but it does not make a man respected here." Baba Nur nodded slowly. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a small carved sparrow. It was beautiful, simple but full of life. He placed it in Kiran's palm. "I made that 40 years ago," said the old man, "in a village that told me the same thing yours is telling you, that what I could do with my hands was not strong enough, not useful enough, not man enough." He paused. I almost believed them. Kiran stared at the sparrow in his hand. "What stopped you?" he asked. And here I want to pause again and ask you something that matters deeply. What is the thing inside you that the world keeps telling you is not enough? What is the gift you have been hiding because you are afraid it will not be respected? Write it in the comments. Just one word or one sentence, because I promise you, you are not alone.
Baba Nur looked at Kiran and said the words that would echo inside the boy's chest for the rest of his life. "Son, the river does not look at the mountain and wish it were stone. The river knows what it is. It knows its own strength, its own direction, its own purpose. And because it stays true to itself, it carves through rock. It feeds every field it passes. It reaches the sea. But the river that tries to become a mountain, it simply stops flowing. It dries, and the world loses the river without ever gaining a mountain." The morning air was still. A bird sang somewhere in the trees above them. Kiran felt something crack open inside his chest. Not painfully, the way a seed cracks open because something is finally ready to grow. He went home and found his carving knife in the bottom of his wooden box, underneath old cloth and forgotten things. He held it in his hand. He could feel the familiar weight of it, the rightness of it. He sat under the banyan tree that evening for the first time in months. He carved through the evening, through the sunset, through the darkness that came slowly and wrapped the village in quiet. He carved by the light of a small lamp his mother brought him without being asked. What he made that night was the most honest thing he had ever created. He carved a boy sitting under a tree, bent over something in his hands. The boy's shoulders carried both tiredness and peace. His hands were working. His face was turned slightly downward, but there was something in the angle of it, a kind of quiet dignity, a kind of unspoken strength. He carved a boy who was simply, fully himself. Word spread through the village the way all real things spread, quietly, through feeling, not announcement. People came to the banyan tree. They stood and looked at the carving. Old women pressed their hands to their mouths. Farmers stood in silence with their arms crossed and their eyes soft. One elder, a man who had spent 30 years leading the village council, stood before the carving for a very long time. Then he turned to Kieran and said something nobody expected. "I have attended 100 village meetings. I have listened to 100 speeches. I have seen strong men do important things." He paused. "But I have never felt the truth of a life the way I feel it standing in front of this piece of wood." He placed his hand on Kieran's shoulder. This is power, son. Real power. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that stays." Kieran felt tears rise in his eyes. He did not hide them. And that is the lesson. That is the lesson this entire story was always walking toward. Real power is not about being the loudest voice in the room. Real power is not about imitating the person the world currently applauds. Real power, the kind that lasts, the kind that moves people, the kind that carves itself into memory, is found only in one place, in the full, brave, unapologetic truth of who you already are. Kieran spent months trying to become Rajan. He gained nothing and lost everything. One night, being completely himself, produced something that moved an entire village. That is not coincidence. That is not luck. That is the law of authenticity. When you align with your true self, you stop pushing against the current, and the current carries you. The world will always have louder people, more confident people, more traditionally impressive people. Let them be what they are. Your job, your only job, is to be what you are, completely, courageously, without apology. Because there is not another person on this earth with your exact eyes, your exact way of seeing, your exact gift. When you hide it, the world loses something it cannot replace. When you share it, fully, honestly, without fear, you give the world something it cannot find anywhere else. You give it you. So today, before you close this video, I want you to make one decision, just one. Find the thing you put down, the thing you stopped doing because someone made you feel it was not enough. The carving knife, the notebook, the garden, the song, the idea, the dream you called too small. Pick it up, go back to the banyan tree, sit down, and begin. Because the river was never meant to become a mountain. The river was meant to flow. And when it does, when you do, nothing on this earth can stand in your way. Be yourself, not sometimes, not when it is safe, always, completely, powerfully, you. If this story touched you today, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me what gift you are going to start showing the world. And if you are new here, subscribe, because every week we come back to this village, this fire, this truth together. Until next time, stay real, stay rooted, and never stop being you.